Good morning, good morning. Hello to all of you who decided to join us today for another amazing webinar. Welcome to week 2 of the HIV Prevention and Education Summit. This year's theme is It Takes a Village, Health Advocacy and Building Community. This is such an important topic and theme that we're having this year, this summit. And I'm excited to be a part of today's discussion as we speak to the topic of the me you refuse to see, the invisibility of HIV positive cisgender Black women and its impact on their mental health and health care. So before we get started, there are a few things I need to remind you of. One, the chat box will be disabled. However, you can ask all your questions and comments you may have in the Q&A box below. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and experiences of today's presentation. And your questions will be answered at the end of our presentation. That way you can sit and experience and learn what will be presented today by our amazing panelists. Again, if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please use the Q&A box below because the chat box has been disabled. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lydia Joyce, our moderator for today's presentation.
Happy Wednesday, y'all. Again, welcome. First and foremost, I want to thank the panelists for sharing space with us on today. Second of all, I want to thank all of those attendees that we can't see beyond the screen for taking time out to join us on this very important topic. I want to say also that during the next hour, maybe hour and a half, I'll be your moderator, and we'll be sharing all of our experiences as Black women who are thriving with the HIV diagnosis. Some of these experiences may be a bit much to take in, but they're our experiences. So if you find yourself in need of having to disengage, taking a step away, practicing self-care in the moment, please do so. Take the ouch, receive the ouch, because we are trying to better the wraparound services and the continuum care when it comes to cisgender Black women who've been diagnosed with HIV. So this is your permission, for lack of better words, to take a step away and re-engage once you've been able to take the moment of self-care. But again, thank you. I am happy and excited to have this conversation. And Dr. Rita, do you want me to start?
You're good to go.
Okay, awesome. So first things first, thinking through the title of today's panel discussion, The Me You Refuse to See, the Invisibility of HIV Positive Cisgender Women and its Impact on Their Identity and Mental Health. What are your first thoughts that come in mind after hearing this? Also, do you believe it is an accurate summation of what it means to show up in this world as a Black woman who has been diagnosed with HIV? I'm gonna start to my right. On the screen, that's going to be Jocelyn. You could take this away. Start us off with today's discussion.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you beautiful ladies and to discuss this topic. It really hits home with me. First thought, just that first part before the colon, the me you refuse to see, is just like, no matter how open you are, how transparent you are on social media, you know, just to spread awareness and positivity, it's always going to be somebody that's not willing to understand the impact the diagnosis has. In correlation to being able to show up and be transparent. It still can sometimes lead to just unnecessary attacks or derogatory comments, even though I'm just sharing my truth. So the word refuse for me is like people making the active choice to be oblivious.
So you do agree that it's an accurate summation of what it means?
I do agree. Yeah, I agree, and like I said, very much so resonated with how I struggle sometimes to continue to show up. with my mental health barriers, and the barriers that I have taken the steps I need to better my mental health because I'm a Black woman. So it not only with the HIV diagnosis, just that the fact that I have a diagnosed mental health disorder as well, I sometimes face invisibility and discrimination.
Thank you. Beautiful. Miss Shadon McCants, what were your first thoughts when you read that? I know we had our own one-off conversations about this, but what was the first immediate thought? And do you think it's accurate?
I think it's very accurate. Like you said, we have had our one-offs. And first, I'm like everybody else, I'm excited to be here on a panel with some of my women that I just love and I adore. The only person I actually think I don't know is Jocelyn Meeks. So I'm excited to meet you. I'm excited to hear more about what you've had to say. So yes, Lydia, it just eats me at the core. Yes, how invisible I feel like we are in a lot of spaces and places. I do believe that it has had an impact on so many of us, Jocelyn and so many others that are on this call and in this space for us to show up. Because we show up because for most of us, it's like, I know it's bigger than me. There's so many other women that are out here that are just existing with the diagnosis of HIV. And so the fact that there's no representation or not, I mean, honestly, I'm still waiting on the woman living with HIV who is in a space of entertainment or sports or something to show up. Yeah, we have our Ray Lewis Thornton, we have her, but what have we had since her? And so, yes, the invisibility is not okay because, again, it does put us in spaces where it leads us to believe that it's just us and we're in this by ourselves and that we don't matter. But the reality is I know just the five of us plus so many more that is hopefully will not continue to be the story. But right now, yes, it is a summation true that we are invisible for most parts. And I know we'll get into, what that invisibility has caused for so many of us. So yeah, it's definitely an accurate summation for sure.
Thank you so much, the beautiful Miss Shadon McCants, for your take. And I gotta say, the world-renowned Lasagna Trailer. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, this morning, my apologies. Yes. I give premium gas when it's due. So it's due. So we're gonna get this premium gas. It's 93 this afternoon, this morning, okay? So Miss Lasagna, what were your first thoughts when you heard about the title? Like, what were the first things that came into your mind? And again, from your perspective, do you think this is an accurate summation of what we experience?
Initially, when I saw the title, I was a little bit taken back because I'm like, are we invisible? Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I had to kind of sit in it for a while and truly consider what does it mean to be invisible? And then I had to ask the counter narrative around that, which is what does it mean to be seen? Mm-hmm. And within that, I became really emotional. And I referenced a short-lived conversation around how there was only a few women who had been newly diagnosed with HIV in Atlanta one particular year. And for me, that only meant millions to me because that only, we should not have even one. She's not an only. So it definitely made me emotional and realized that we've got to be in it until the last one. Right. And then it also made me think about the impact that it has on us racially. So racially, having been a pharmacy technician for 10 years, seeing who's coming to pick up medications depending on where I was working. So location mattered. Racially, I've noticed that you can't tell me there's more Black gay men out there than white gay men, right? And when I look at how they're being impacted by HIV, I think about why is it that white women aren't getting HIV as much as Black women, right? And so that came to mind, what policies are set in place that impact certain communities unlike others? Why is it not equitable in the sense of who's getting it and who's getting treatment and access and so forth, right? And then last but not least, I thought about becoming the change that I wanted to see. Noticing that I did not see women like myself living with HIV, and I needed that. I needed to see a younger Black woman, healthy, professional, pushing through, enjoying life, having children, getting married, whatever her goals were, traveling. I needed to see that. And as I was searching for it, I was requested to show up more. And the more that I knew I would show up, the more I would find them. And so within finding them, it's like, I got to get that one, but I actually want to reach millions more, because it's not just one that needs to be touched. There are so many more that need to be touched. So when I thought of this, it definitely brought on a lot of different emotions, but it also gave me pause to reflect on why we're even able to stand and we'll sit here amongst each other today, you know.
You hit us with heavy at the beginning, but no, that, yeah, you should, okay, all right, yeah, you're making us think. Come on, Masanya, don't start this is early. We're just 12 minutes to the panel discussion. No, we're not gonna do this. And last but not least, the jazzy Miss Lynette Treywick. Sister, tell me, what did you think? I know you had some thoughts because we didn't talk, and yeah, what went through your mind?
Well, I'd have had some thoughts before this. I'd have had some thoughts while everybody else was speaking and sharing. So I just want to, first thank you, for just having this space and just being able to be amongst some greats that I also look up to. So yes, going back to the invisibility thing, something that Masanya said definitely hit home for me, because when I first saw it, I said, invisibility, I don't think I'm invisible. I think, people see me and people, they hear me and all that kind of stuff. But then I also, I was taking some notes, but I also started reflecting on the beginning when I was initially diagnosed, and I felt so alone, and it was like, well, where am I in this? Where are those people who look like me? Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe they were right when they said gay white men are the only ones that get HIV, and so that's where my mind drifted when kind of looking at this topic. And I wrote something and I said I was so invisible that I didn't even realize it. I was even unseen to myself, to where I didn't even, and even now I find myself sometimes being so naive that I'm like, no, that's not an issue. What do you mean? I tend to stay, I have a couple of good friends that say I stay in my little bubble. And I do. And sometimes I like it that way, but I also know that I need to step outside of that bubble because I am an important part of this fight, and I know, that the more I speak out, the more that I share, the more, unfortunately, we will find other women who are struggling through this as well. So we have to do our parts in order to help everybody not be invisible. So yes, I definitely think that this was a great summation of it, especially when it goes into, discussing mental health, because for me, and I'm sure you guys can relate, you ladies can relate too, HIV is not the biggest issue with me when it comes to HIV. The physical part is not an issue for me. It's the mental, it's the depression, it's all of those things that come as not just a secondary source, but those root causes that cause HIV in the beginning. So yes, definitely. Like I said, just to go back, I was so invisible that I didn't even realize it. So just trying to move past that, I think, this was definitely a good topic.
You were so invisible that you just didn't know, you didn't recognize it. If y'all hear my puppy in the background, apologies, he's cutting up in the background. Define what that invisibility and how it relates in this space, like define that.
For me, it was being unseen, unheard, pushed to the side, neglected, services that didn't match what I needed, going into these support groups and not seeing myself and turning around and walking right back out because you guys are not talking about anything that relates to me. It was about hearing people talk about, oh, well, if you weren't doing what you were doing, then you wouldn't have got HIV, you know, even going into church, you know, going into church hurt and things like that. So it's like, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing the story that I'm telling you. Like, my story doesn't start with HIV. So you have to hear me. We have so many intersections just as women living with HIV, but then you throw in cisgender, which is a whole another part of it. And you know, you throw in cisgender, you throw in Black, you throw in poverty, you throw in so many other aspects of that. There's so many intersections, but yes, definitely unseen, unheard. And I just feel like screaming and saying that's not for me. Even when we talk about the medication, you know, talking about, okay, now we have to switch your medication because you want to have a baby, okay, let's now put you on this one. Why wasn't I on that all this whole time? Because I could have wanted to have a baby, I could have became pregnant or any of that this whole time. So that's what that invisibility feels like for me.
Jocelyn, what does that invisibility define? That what does it feel like, and how was it? You know, how did it show up navigating mental health for you?
Well, mental health was my battle before I was diagnosed with HIV.
Okay.
So it just exacerbated those issues. I'm dealing with bipolarism and dissociative identity disorder. Because my brain has had to come in and go to bat for me, and I've compartmentalized and fragmented just to cope. Invisibility for me looks like seeking and finding a Black female psychiatrist that didn't help me when my medication needed a prior authorization. And after calls from me, my support system, my therapist, nobody's messages were returned. I still don't have the proper cocktail I need to take care of my mental health via medication. And I thought that, you know, hey, just being frank, another sister would be able to understand my plight and want to help. That's why I sought you out, sis. But no, you don't even see me. You don't even hear me because you're not returning my calls. At the very least, return my call and say, hey, it doesn't cover the medication. We need to go another route. Let's revisit, you know, what's available that's along these lines that your insurance covers. Nothing like that happened. And I'm still on the search, still on the hunt. And how do I cope, you know, without what I need, you know, that to deal with what's out of my control. And so I really felt let down, let down by that part of the healthcare system. And then I've come into situations where trying to get my antiretrovirals. You got me on samples for this many weeks, and then, okay, we can't keep doing that. So now we're gonna have to try to find now we're gonna find a medication that your insurance covers. And then you're gonna switch me again. And then I had to call back and have that prescription feel recanted because it causes suicidal thoughts and ideations. I don't need any help with that. So let's revisit. Okay, I went, did a little more digging myself. This one would be better suited. I can deal with these side effects better than the other. But if I didn't advocate for myself, or if I didn't have anybody on my support team saying, hey, no, look at that, what's the side effects on that? Because they changing you so much. You know, the medical professionals just trying to prescribe you with something and get you out the office.
So for you, is invisibility look like having to self-advocate across the board when there were professionals in place that should have been doing their due diligence to make sure they held themselves harmless and making sure they can handle you with care throughout the continuum of care.
Correct.
Shadon, for you, and I know that you're a therapist, you worked in mental health, and being a Black woman showing up in this space and having that educational and expertise background, what is the visibility? How is it defined for you?
First off, I want to give that puppy over there some love because he over there acting a whole mess right now. And I know what he looked like with his old cute chocolate self. So I'm just trying to stay focused in the moment, but he is over there acting out. So we're not going to act like we don't hear him over here. But yes, and so in this moment, I do want to honor you, Jocelyn, as a mental health professional on this call. Because also as a woman living with HIV, and more so, like you said, thriving with a diagnosis for 26 years, I understand invisibility. I understand it from the level, and I'm going to take it, Lydia, to invisibility even prior to my diagnosis, because that's how this happened, because I was invisible as a Black woman. And at that time, I was invisible as a young Black teenage woman or girl. So when I talk about invisibility, what that means is to, like you said, Lynette, to be unseen, to be unheard. For me to have been a 17-year-old diagnosed with HIV in 95, but prior to that, at the age of 14, that's when I gave up my goodies, my cookies. So between that time and the time of diagnosis, it was literally like 2.5 years. And I had several STDs, several STIs. But at no point did anybody say, what's going on with this young Black girl?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on that she's coming in our office every 3 to 4 months with an STD, a repeated STD, whether it's gonorrhea, trichomonas, whatever, chlamydia, all those different things. I was invisible before my diagnosis. And then I go in, I'm then now diagnosed with HIV in 95. Of course, it's still a white gay man's disease.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still unseen. There's still no programs for me. There's still no circles for me. So for me, invisibility was being unseen, I can't say necessarily unheard. I was unheard in spaces that I need to be heard in, but thankfully I had a provider who did hear me, who did see me. Otherwise, when I look at the world in which I live in, I was unseen, I was unheard, I didn't exist. Therefore, there was a lot of things that weren't available. So I'm going to leave it there. But yes, my invisibility started well before my diagnosis and unfortunately continued, and to some degree still continues today. Not to the same degree, because there's women like us fighting to show that we are here and we ain't going nowhere. But yes, that's when it started for me.
And last but not least, thank you. I mean, and yes, he's still acting up, y'all. I'm sorry. In a minute, I was gonna bring him in here and put him right here and be like, "Hey, Braxton, meet everybody. Everybody be Braxton."
That's fine, because Braxton ain't about to let up.
Lasagna, for you, and especially living in the metropolitan area that you are in, do you feel like, well, define what invisibility looks like for you and your experience?
I think everyone else has already stated every experience that I have actually had when it comes to being invisible. But I wanted to revisit something that Jocelyn mentioned, excuse me, and that part of advocating for yourself while advocating for others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oftentimes because I've been like participating, like front facing in the community so much, I typically try to, like, when I show up for my doctor's appointments, that part is work. It's compartmentalized. It's separate
Mm-hmm.
from when I'm showing up for myself. And when I'm showing up for myself and I'm experiencing loads of depression, I understand that I'm coming in for myself, but I'm also coming in for others. And I have this expectation that even if you don't know the work that I've done, I have an expectation that you're going to treat me, gently, and knowing that every time I come in here, I am refacing and reliving a trauma that any other time I don't have to consider or think about on a daily basis, right? And just because I'm okay with being public doesn't mean that it's still not impacting me privately as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I go to the doctor's appointments, I have this expectation, but sometimes I feel that professionals, healthcare professionals, see it as being privileged because you're coming in here with this expectation, right? As a person living with HIV, I expect you to treat me well and do these things and so forth. And I wish I could find stronger words to say how much I dislike it, but I'll smile with it instead. That's how much I dislike it. I think I would think that 40 years in, that if they would take a moment, and when I say they, those who work in HIV, if they would take a moment to really put a micro lens on how Black women are navigating the healthcare system around their HIV diagnosis, they could heal a whole lot of people in other healthcare systems. It would set the tone for the cultural framework that keeps Black women in healthcare and keeps them going to take care of their communities and keeps them assisting Black men in their healthcare, which essentially prevents heterosexual identifying women from getting HIV, but then it also trickles down to all the other communities. So I feel that if they would prioritize and put first the challenges of Black women and HIV, then the invisibility portion would, trickle away. And personally, I've had, I think in my most recent experience, I've had to go back to one of my first HIV providers because I realized that I need a certain level of stability in my HIV care or I'm going to completely fall off. It is so vital to me living with HIV and doing well with it because they are my family. They are my support system to keep me accountable more than my peers. And so going to an OBGYN to discuss family planning as a Black woman, it was really interesting, but going to a Black woman, I had an expectation. And knowing that OBGYN practice assisted and had a culture wrapped around knowing Black women in HIV, I had an expectation. And yet still I was asked, how do I plan to get pregnant? Do I plan to use artificial insemination? And so that just brought up all of the feels around the stigma that you are hopeful to not experience when you're going to any healthcare practice facility. Once again, smiling for the frustration, the anger, and the pain. Not smiling because I'm happy and joyful. I think that the way that healthcare providers address HIV as a whole, they could learn a lot from the providers that we give 5 and 10 stars to around those who treat us, cisgender identifying Black women with HIV, because they tend to also be some of the top doctors that, or providers, because nurse practitioners play a part in that as well, that assist all other genders. They tend to be the top ones. So I think we really set the tone around that. So my invisibility really starts with hating, strongly disliking, coming into my own appointment and having to advocate for myself when I don't feel like it. I just want to be here to be a patient. So, yeah.
Is holding back strong words and putting a smile on it not the way that Black women move through life? But it's when we stop smiling and when we use those strong words that we get typecast as angry Black woman. But it took me to show up and show out in your medical office, in your room, for me to get something to move. And I know we have providers join us on this phone call. Like Messiah said, put a micro lens on how Black women whatever your profession, whatever your specialty is, come through your door from the time they come through the front door and greet it at the desk to the time they go back and get their labs, because it's not as pleasant as many of you would like to think it is. And that has an impact on the invisibility. It has an impact on our mental health. It has an impact on how connected to care we stay, because a lot of us will fall out because I don't feel like Ms. Lane said, I don't feel like I should have to go through that. You're the professional. My insurance pays you. If I didn't book this appointment, that'll be one less check that you will have to collect. And this is me being frank. Y'all know how I talk. This is what it is. And if the bottom line is the dollar versus being, totally cared for, do you not want to make sure that that's a repeat dollar that comes to your office every quarter? And that's something that we echo so much, is that the wraparound services and the continuum of care is where the biggest impact we feel the invisibility is. No person, no patient should have to come in the office and have to self-advocate for themselves. My sister Josh and I have gone through, you want to do that as a client or a consumer or, whatever, but she shouldn't have to go through a list of medications to find out which one is going to be the best mixture of cocktails and medicines. So this one impact that and that one impact this. Ms. Lane shouldn't have to walk into an office and walk you through. I know it's like to have to sit down and walk through a new provider through your appointment. I went to school with an MBA in marketing. I didn't go to med school. That's your profession. But when you take that away from us, it aids into the visibility, and it further impacts, and it further pushes us back and does not move the needle forward in how we receive and are connected to care. So I wanted to add that caveat. Thank y'all for sharing. So I told you, I didn't think it was gonna get this heavy, but it did. And we all agree that it's invisibility. And because the next question is, how has it impacted our livelihoods, our total health, and our social well-being? But we've all discussed that, it impacts us in every aspect of our life. Does anyone have anything they want to add to that question? How has this invisibility impacted your life, your well-being, your social well-being, like your total health? Does anyone have anything? Because I know we said a lot of it, but there's any caveats you want to drop, especially for those who are joining us?
I think for me, like we've all talked about, especially for our mental health, I think how it's impacted us. Thankfully, of course, as a therapist, I'm a therapist with a therapist. And I advocate for my mental health. I don't play with the people's, and I'm continuing to stay abreast. And so, Jocelyn, I really would like to talk to you offline about some other services that are available to us that we don't talk about in mental health, because it is what Lynette said, is that HIV is not the issue for most of us. And I know that, again, as a woman living, but also as a woman serving women living with HIV, it is the mental health. I tell people, it's like, if you've never been hit by an 18-wheeler, then you don't understand the impact that one has experienced and is experiencing and living through after receiving a diagnosis in office by phone or however that may have been. I think for me, though, invisibility for me has showed up or was in spaces where I wanted to pursue my life in entertainment and acting and modeling and all those different things. But because you don't see women, where have you seen a woman that's out loud living with a diagnosis of HIV in film, on the runway, in TV, doing the damn thing, excuse me, and living and thriving? There is none. That fear of, if someone finds out that I got this kissing role with this fine man on the scene, what's gonna happen? So for me, I wanted to talk about the livelihood part. There were things that it took away from me. Now today I sit like, no more. I'm going after everything that's mine. I'm going after that acting gig. I'm going after that modeling gig. I'm going after entertainment. I'm doing the things that I want to do. But for so long, and I still feel like it's going to be a fight, because it's like, we are the change that we want to see. And we also know, like all of us have said, that means that we have to advocate while still showing up for ourselves. And so for me, I'm just determined that I want to be that person that hasn't been seen, that hasn't done it, but it does impact our livelihood. Because for me, it was like, I was afraid that if I did do what I wanted, I followed my dream, that I was going to get off a stage one day, having had this amazing show or this amazing premiere, only to find out that somebody outed me on TMZ, the Shade Room, or whatever. Who wants that? Who wants to be that person? Who wants to live like that? And so, because again, we're not being shown, we're not being seen. You have that fear, or at least I did. I don't anymore because I'm going after everything that's mine. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm about to let nothing and no one, and if that means the five of us, we be the change that we want to see for our sisters that are out there, like Masanya said, for the one. For me, I see it as, one woman at a time. Ladia, you have given us the words to the secret society. I don't want another woman in this. But for the women that are in it, guess what? I'm going to show up for us because we are here. We're not going anywhere, and our lives do matter. So that's for me what invisibility has meant. It meant me thinking that my dream was denied, but yet it was only deferred. And now I'm going after everything that's mine. So.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody else? How has this invisibility impacted your total health, your livelihood, your social well-being? We've talked about it, but any other caveats that you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah, just one part about when we were talking about, well, this whole thing is specifically talking about mental health, but regarding therapists, one of my experiences, and this is something that I'm struggling through right now. So I just recently moved from Philadelphia to Maryland. I moved in September. So that's only, what's that, 6, 7, 8, about 9 months or some sort or so. I've so far I've had 2 therapists in 9 months. Both of them were doing a complete disservice. The second one, I've had so many different experiences from, they didn't call back. I would go to the office. They would call me while I was in the office. Oh, I forgot our appointment was today, different things like that. And I've had so many experiences, especially living my life publicly. And this goes back to what Masanya said earlier. Just because I'm okay with my diagnosis publicly doesn't mean I'm not struggling privately. I've had so many experiences where I go into an office and I, start getting into whatever the issues are. And at some point I might mention what I do as an advocate. And they're like, oh, really? And then it turns into an interview, rather than the therapeutic environment that they're supposed to create. And now I'm like, no, this is not what it's supposed to be. Don't ask me about that part. I want to talk about me. Like, I don't want to talk about what I'm doing out there. I want to talk about me. And then now I'm discouraged. Now I don't want to even come back because I don't feel like another interview, because I'm paying you. Interviews I get paid for. So what this is not what this is not how this is supposed to go. So that's been one of my struggles too, because it's going to come up because what I do is my passion, how I serve women and how I show up for women living with HIV. That's my passion. So I could easily say in my head, okay, well, just don't even talk about advocacy when you go in there, but it's going to come out because it's what I do and what I love to do. So that's been the hard thing to kind of navigate. And like I said, it makes no sense that I've already had to fire 2 therapists in 9 months. And now, that's a whole different mental hurdle to get over because, okay, now I have to look for another therapist and I have to explain the whole, where'd you come from and how'd you get here story and, hope that we even match. And who feels like dealing with that again, which is triggering again. So yeah, that's the other thing. So now it's like, how do you continue to deal with that other stuff that's really impacted me more than the HIV actually is? Because when that stuff is unaddressed, then it impacts my HIV. Because my symptoms of depression and anxiety and PTSD and all of that are coming to a head. Now I'm not taking my medicine because that's the last thing on my mind. So yeah, now my numbers are changing. I'm now I'm detectable again, and now that may impact my marriage. And so it's my mental health that drives all of that other stuff. It's not my HIV that drives everything else.
It's like they take that HIV caveat and make that be the driving force behind everything, not seeing how this ultimately is more important and it will have a direct impact on that and not the other way around.
Exactly.
And this is from a provider's point of view, especially a mental health provider. You would think they would be competent enough knowing that this is a driving force behind anything. I say all the time, we shouldn't be concerned about how a person takes their medicine. We need to make sure that their mind is in a space to be able to take said medicine before we give them a prescription, because that prescription will sit there and everything else will go hell in the handbasket if we don't address the mental health piece first. So thank you for sharing that. Jocelyn, do you have anything to add? Not Jocelyn. Yes, Jocelyn. I'm sorry. Yes, Jocelyn, do you have anything to add?
I did want to piggyback on what Lynette said. As far as you have to be able to come to a place mentally where you are ready for the treatment. Newly diagnosed, I'll say that. But for me, how it has impacted just like my thriving is that when I have the gap in being able to get my prescription, it sends me into a panic. It takes me right back to where I was when I was diagnosed, because it's that fear of, okay, I'm finna come out of undetectable status and my number's finna go up, my CD4 count. Like it freaks me out, and it messes with my relationships. It's a total mind freak, and it's troublesome. And I do a lot of that suffering alone, I feel like, because I feel misunderstood because of how I'm responding from my place of trauma. Because the diagnosis was traumatic for me. It was a traumatic experience. And I'm doing the work now, hard as it is in therapy, to go ahead and be able to give the weight that I've been carrying that's not mine back to who it belongs to, and find myself again. Because having to pick a way to show up, or just my brain picking away for me to be able to cope and stay alive through this, it has caused me to lose me. So I'm trying to get back to just me, and being able to be okay with showing up however it looks on whatever day. That's what it took away from me. Peace of mind.
Well, Jocelyn, first and foremost, thank you for your transparency with me. I'm seeing you on social media, and you're not trying, you're doing. We don't try to do anything. You are actively doing. And I want to take this moment to big you up, to give you your kudos, your flowers, and everything else, because I see it. Like, for someone who may not still be in the same city with you, I see it. And I want to, again, give you your flowers for taking the step, because you're doing the necessary work without, even in this, we're dealing with invisibility and dealing with the topic that we're talking, in the midst of all of that, you are still showing up for yourself. It's unfair that you have to do it at the level that you have to do without the support, but don't think that what you're doing is not being seen, that is not appreciated, and that is not honored. So I want to appreciate you, love on you, and honor you in this moment, because I see it. If I see it, other people do. So I'm gonna thank you for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we're gonna let that moment just breathe for a second. Let's see, Dr. Rita, we got like what, about another 15 minutes before we do Q&A? Okay, maybe Dr. Rita stepped away from her. Okay, yes, she's out here. Okay, no problem. So this last question, because I started off, I'm going to ask, do you believe that there is a refusal to acknowledge us? And resoundingly, we came through the gate and said, no, that there is. It's not even a belief, that is actual, probably almost evidential evidence, and like pieces that we know that there is a refusal to acknowledge and to see HIV positive, cisgender identifying Black women. But why do you think there is? Why do you think that there is such a refusal to see us, especially when it comes to programming initiatives surrounding HIV education, prevention, awareness, and even within the continuum of care? Why do you feel like there's a refusal to do so? We're gonna do this popcorn style, so let's go. Shadon, you ready to go?
I'm ready to hear what Masanya got to say, because I know Masanya about to tear it up, so I see what
okay, Masanya, let's go. And
go.
Come on,
It's
sis.
a,
Do
it's
not
a,
hold
it's
back.
a, it's a, it's a load, it's a loaded question. Like all of it is, because I'm still sitting in Jocelyn's words, still sitting in that right now. And I'm like, I've been frustrated, but I've been putting the frustration to good use over the years. I had to catch myself earlier today talking to a woman who's newly diagnosed. She's been positive for a year now, and she's currently pregnant, and has not ever been connected to other women living with HIV. And she doesn't have a lot of the resources that she needs while she's pregnant. And so, of course, that's a sore spot for me because I found out that I was pregnant and positive at the same time. You know, so I had the entire 9 months and the thoughts and consideration of, you know, having an abortion and, you know, definitely been, you know, really transparent about just how difficult and unpleasant my pregnancy was while being positive, and not disclosing until after I had 3 confirmed HIV negative tests for that child. So it'll be almost 12 years this year. It'll be 12 years this year. And I had to catch myself while talking to that young lady this morning because I was like, whoa, 11 went by and I didn't even really sit in 11. We're about to say 12 soon. And I think that when it comes to programming and initiatives, it is a bit ridiculous and frustrating that I am creating spaces intentionally for women like myself while still looking around for spaces, like hoping and wishing like it was already there.
Yeah.
And then having to dissect scientifically, research wise, looking back to move forward around research and how Black women don't really show up in spaces because it doesn't feel like what they need it to be. There's not a culture sustainable for the culture in which they live. And when I say they, I mean we. And having to ensure that my nails are done before I come on here, find the right earrings before I come on here, make sure the color that I got on is going to be popping versus the background. Do I want the sticky notes showing with the dresser mirror that I had to put up for it? Do I want it to be blurred? Do I want it to be a virtual background? Do I want to put on makeup? Do I want to do the eyebrows and attempt to do it even though I'm not great at it? Do I want to look as unwell as I feel? You know, my hair, I was supposed to get it done yesterday. How do I show up? Because I'm going to look like I got HIV when I do show up. So now I gotta, let me put a little extra effort because I'm not just showing up for Masanya. I'm showing up for not only just Black women living with HIV, but I'm also showing up for Black women in general. With money and without money sometimes, most times, right? So, you know, just having to consider all of that, that refusal piece, I understand that HIV started with gender and sexuality being at the forefront. And that's where it derived from and what it's rooted in. Therefore, it's going to always be a wedge for us to create space, demand space in order for us to feel and be seen. So the refusal, I think, is just obliviousness, as what Jocelyn mentioned earlier. And I think that they just don't know how. So there's no true sustainability because they treat us as projects and programs instead of sustainable livelihood to keep us going for many years to come that we'll just figure it out. So, you know, I know that was a lot.
And it was an excellent way to answer that question because based on the faces and the responses, you echoed so eloquently what we were thinking. And again, finding nice words to put it, because I'm sure if you had asked me, Shadon, or Jocelyn, or even Lynette in a different setting, all of our respective cities would have come out. So no, you.
I mean,
that was
no piece of
I understand. No. Listen, I'm not going but no. You were real graceful, sis. You put that real gracefully.
Very graceful. more graceful
Very
than I would be, because the reality is I'm sorry, them being oblivious or don't know how, I'm done with that. I'm done with them with giving excuses to to systems saying they don't know how. Yeah, they do. They just don't want to at this point. I'm sorry that I continue to see commercials that we are not represented in, continue to see so many things, whether it's pamphlets, whether it's info. Oh, come on now, stop it. Stop the nonsense. And I think it goes a little bit to what you talked about. I think we kind of mentioned it, is because when we do speak up, when we do advocate in your office, in your space, then I become the angry black woman. Why I gotta be angry? They said Michelle Obama was angry. Wasn't nothing angry about her. I'm just tired of taking your nonsense, listening to your excuses for why black women aren't being prioritized. Like, I'm done with it. I'm done giving excuses for it. I'm sorry. That's just me. And I'm gonna be I'm still gonna be PC, but that is the truth about it. Like, stop with the nonsense. I think a part of it is, though, is that even as black women, like the new initiative that's out with Vive, Risk to Reason, is giving us as black women understanding, okay, what are my reasons for showing up, though? Because again, a lot of us, we know we're not in the research. A part of that is twofold. It's because one, half the time we don't know about the research, but then two, there's us who know the importance of us being a part of the research, so that we can be inclusive. And so, yeah, I'm done with they don't know no better, because they do. It's like, it's like they don't want black women to be black women, but the reality is this world was built on our backs. Like, let's keep this 100. There
correct.
is no US, there is no America without black women. We fed you, we nurtured you, we held you, we were the container, and we are the container. So stop with the nonsense. Stop with saying that oh, well, we don't know where to find you, or then you want to and then the ones that have been represented, and Lydia, you can speak to this, they try to represent us in a way that ain't even true. Like, come on now. I think somebody said it earlier. We are beautiful and we are bad. But then there's times where we don't want to have to do all of that. Like this morning, I was like deciding if I was gonna put on some makeup. Like, well, my eyebrows, I didn't highlight these. I just put a little pencil and said what it's gonna be. But it's right, Messiah. It's like, I'm not only showing up though for me, I'm showing up for all the other women. It's like, because a part of me wants to continue to change the narrative, because we are successful, we are working, we are these bad chicks, beautiful and bold. And so it's like, it's twofold, but I'm done with giving excuses. Like, y'all, I can't do that anymore. It's not that they don't know. It's just that they are choosing not to do it, because they are choosing to not get this realness. But it's okay that you build this world on our backs, and that you continue to keep putting it on our shoulders, that you continue to want me to keep wearing this cape that's choking the hell out of me at times. Done taking the cape off, setting boundaries, and
Yeah.
standing in what it is, and positioning myself and the selves of women that look like me and that are living with this diagnosis to no longer be invisible. So that's just a little bit part that, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to kick down doors and just keep yelling loud enough until they make the spaces and the places for us, and that's what we have to do. So
I'm like that, Shadon. And my attitude and my thought is like, if Beyonce can find a whole all black woman band wherever she go in this whole entire world. Now, I'm not saying medical providers and drug companies got Beyonce money, but they got some deep pockets. If sis can go wherever she want to go and find a whole black woman production, everybody from the person that greets you at the door to the folks that's probably folding clothes in the back and washing the clothes in between set changes, be a black woman. When you need to find us, you do. So why not make this important? Because to me, and I ain't trying to answer the question, but my answer is just like, your refusal is steeped in you not recognizing our vulnerability. Because if you think about the cities that we reflect here, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Dallas, Memphis, all of us have cities where over 80% of the women who are diagnosed in those cities are Black women. And you talk to the officials and you talk to the people that hold the purse strings, and you sit down and in Memphis, 93% of all women who are diagnosed with HIV are Black women. That means every 14 women who are diagnosed, 13 of those women will be a Black woman. And I've sat down with people who hold the purse strings and I've asked, well, are these the stats? Mm-hmm. We agree that these are accurate. Correct. So why are we not doing anything about it? The whole room goes silent. And as medical providers and those AOSs and ASOs and CBOs who may be reflecting on this phone call, do and become more intentional with being inclusive and including Black women who show up in this space as, and yes, I'm gonna say this, and if I get the blowback, it is what it is. We're specifically centering cisgendered Black women because although, yes, all women are women, but our experience, our walk, what we go through, what we impact, and how we are impacted is totally different. And we have to pay attention to what that is, because our vulnerability is steeped in a whole bunch of stuff, and by not acknowledging our vulnerability, it's going to perpetuate the epidemic that is impacting us the greatest. Jocelyn, Lynette, do y'all have anything before we move to the last question and close?
Yes. I've been over here holding my breath.
Go ahead, Lynette.
I'm about to pass a virtual plate around because, yo, listen, it was just so much. It was so much in everything that both Messiah and Shadon said. And it was one of the things that really, really has been resonating with me is that strength of a Black woman. And it's not always a great thing, to go back to what we were saying. I'm tired of being the strong Black woman. I'm tired of appearing to be the strong Black woman, and it's been so many times that I can reflect on in my past where my strength is exactly what made me weak, because I'm so busy focusing on showing up and carrying all of these people that I represent on my shoulders. And I'm here for this woman and that woman, and I'm here to represent this and that, but I want to go in there like, listen, I am a mess. Please help me, but I want to be strong. So I don't go in there like that, and that is, I find myself not being able to advocate for myself because I'm so busy trying to be strong and not show that side of weakness. It's just like, it's like catch-22 for me. But it was just so many things, that really hit me with a lot of things that everybody was saying. And when Messiah was saying, I think that they're oblivious to a lot of the things that are going on. And I also understand what Shadon was saying. Okay, so now what? And then even going into the conversation with cisgender, transgender, I've dealt with that even with creating my nonprofit. My nonprofit is for cisgender women living with HIV. And in the beginning, I heard so much, well, why not transgender? Why can't you include? Because that's not what I want to do. I need spaces for me. And because I need spaces for me, I need spaces for other women, cisgender women like me. That's not my specialty. I know they have their, whatever's going on with so many different genders, but I can't focus on that because I'm tired of making space for everybody else. It's my turn, so it's time for us to stop being that strong person. And even going back to what Shadon was saying earlier, I wanted to respond to, and she was talking about how I just been writing so many things down. I was invisible before my diagnosis. She was sharing her experience with just the medical field prior to HIV. I can even relate with all of those things because why did you not see me then? Why did you not see me as this woman? I had to go into the office all of these different times for the same diagnosis. Why didn't you ask me where my partner was and what was going on at home? I had to go in and apply for a protection from abuse order, and at that time, I don't know if it's still the same, but I went in, I did the application. They say, okay, cool. Now come back in 2 days. How I'm still gonna be alive in 2 days? So it's like, you're not even seeing me. And that was all before HIV. So had you seen me, when I came into the hospital with ruptured vessels in both of my eyes, why didn't you talk more to me about that? So had you had seen me then, I feel like we would be able to eliminate a lot of these HIV numbers, especially in our Black community, with us cisgender Black women. Because if we start addressing a lot of the issues when it comes to domestic violence, in so many different ways, that can eliminate a lot of the issues. So if you see me as a Black woman, going back to what Ms. Anya said earlier, if you see me as a Black woman and all of the things that I have to face as a Black woman, you will then be able to tackle a lot of the issues that come along with HIV as well.
Okay. Ping, 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 ping. I knew that. I said I knew it was going to show up eventually. But no, thank you. We are about to move into our question and answer, but I want to get a last takes from all of you all on the panel. Now, when I ask this question, we are not talking about what can Black cisgender HIV positive women do, right? I am looking for you all to talk to those that are in attendance. And what are actionable steps that they can do to move the needle forward in the race of invisibility, acknowledge and censor Black women who find themselves on the receiving end of this diagnosis? Jocelyn, your hot take. What's your hot 16? What is something that the others can do outside of us, because we already work enough to move the needle forward?
What I wanted to add to the hot tea that was spilled just a few moments ago was that I feel like the refusal that we're overlooked in the program innovation is because the systems expect us to cultivate it.
Mm.
But how can we benefit from it if we have to build it up? It can't, not saying that we can't, but we would still have to wait until we get it in place and get it rocking and rolling for others before it's able to be a benefit for us, and we need it. Also, I feel like nobody's ready, or the systems and the masses aren't ready to see our faces spearheading what we need. Give those of us that are already doing the work and out here putting in the man hours to uplift and just at the very least alleviate some of the barriers to getting the treatment. Give us a platform. If you're gonna put it on our back anyway, let us actually be broadcasted. Put us in the commercials. Put us on the big pharma commercials. Like let us represent ourselves as we know how to do things. You can't seem to meet us where we are or figure it out. But I think that too is a choice. Because all the other letters and all the other ethnic backgrounds have the spaces and have the funding. And we just supposed to pick it out of from where.
You talking real good, Jocelyn. You talking, I heard your Memphis come out. You talking good. And it's actual and it's factual. Shadon, what would you say? What are some actual steps that those join us can take so we don't have to?
Right. Those that are on, and I'm not sure our audience, but you can take, I think one of the things I always ask people is to help change the narrative. Is that when you hear conversations around HIV, that if you have, like now, you've been on this call, you've heard the gems dropped, you've heard the knowledge. Knowledge is only powerful when you use it. And so for me, I would ask that if, depending on if you're working in this space or people in this space, is that you now take what you've learned today about the stories and the truth around cisgender, heterosexual Black women and HIV, and you be the truth in those spaces. You be the knowledge in that space about our experiences and what we need. I think one of the things that you just said, Jocelyn, is very important, is that we need funding. We do need funding. There's, like, I tell people, and this is one of the things I think that really bothered me. It's like, and I think me and Lydia kind of had some one-offs starting about, it's like, soon as I thought Black women, cisgender, heterosexual Black women was about to be in the forefront, like we was about to get it, we was about to do it, the ball dropped out, the bottom fell out again. Because here's another group that needed it more than us. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? So I definitely would like an actionable step is, of course, to take what you've heard today and be the change in the space that you're in. To no longer allow it to be white, gay, and in this and now, same gender loving sex are the priorities outside of Black women. Like, come on now. And specifically heterosexual cisgender. And I, again, y'all, I'm going to be honest, that even drives me crazy. The fact that I have to put all these
Qualifiers.
on top of the fact that I'm a Black woman. Yeah. So that's a whole nother thing. I think the actionable step for me is please take the knowledge. It's only powerful when you use it, as well as if you are able or in spaces and places to advocate for us to have the funding to be able to do the work and the resources that we need to continue doing this work. Because like I tell people, I'm a grassroots and been grassroots organization for far too long. It's no reason that it should have to have been this many years that it's still grassroots. And what we need is not accessible. And so, yeah, that's what I would ask. There's so many more things that I can say, but I'm sure Masanya and Lynette are going to give them the business as well. So I'll pass it to one of you beautiful ladies.
Masanya, what's your take? What's the I'm sorry with pause. Lynette, what's your Lynette, you go. Because Masanya was like, she gonna give us a benediction, then we gonna take these questions from the chat. So Masanya gonna lead us out before we get to the offering. All right. So Lynette, go get on the organ for us and cue up Pastor Trader. Thank you.
I got you. Yes, I got it. No problem. Yes. So what y'all talking money. And that's the conversation that I love. And that also is twofold, because I know one of the things that I've been struggling with, and Messiah she probably sitting over here like, here she go. One of the things I've been talking to her about and struggling with is just language. When it comes to me having a grassroots organization, I get so frustrated when it comes to grants and all of this. And I go to sit down like, okay, this is what I want to do. And that's what I want to do. And it sounds good, I think. But then I look at all these big words that little old me from the hood never had to deal with. I'm just living with HIV, and I know what I would need as a cisgender heterosexual Black woman living with HIV. And these are the things that I would need. So I know that's what a lot of other women would need. So can you help me to be able to get this money and be able to roll out these programs so I can do what I know I need to do for not just me, but other women that look like me? So that's number one. Like, okay, how do we get over that hump to where, like Shadon was saying, my grassroots organization is no longer a grassroots organization. It's something big, and it's something known that has thriving programs that's actually touching the people that it needs to be touching. And no, you can't pick my brain. Like, no, you can't sit and ask me all these questions about if you want your organization to be better, you can pay me to help your organization be better. So no, I'm not going to sit there and talk to you for hours and hours to help you do that for free all the time. Now, I'm not going to say, not all the time, because that's a thing too. So make me feel like I'm valued. I'm valued as well, because I know I'm valued. I know my opinion matters. I know the things, my experiences matter. I know my pain is purpose and all of that good stuff. But now I need you to know it and show up with the funds for it, because a lot of these organizations, I know you got it. You've applied for these big grants and things. You got the money sitting there. You're trying to figure out what to do with it. Hello, we here and we have the ideas. Bring us on as consultants. Bring us on to create these programs for you. Bring us in, give us the money to do the stuff that we sitting right here telling you that we know how to do and we need to do. Give me the money.
Well, Lynette seems like she didn't give us a benediction on this good here evening, but Sonya, I guess, come on with the beef section of the A part of the.
She's gonna do the altar call.
She's gonna do the altar call. Yes, because the resounding thing right now is the money. Yeah, Masanya, what you got to add? Help bring the people on home.
I see my influence. Lynette, I'm so proud of you right now. You have no idea. Yes. I'm going to start with this. To help, if you're looking to engage and help cisgender identifying Black women, whether they're heterosexual or identify as a lesbian or bisexual, the sexuality part really isn't the biggest problem. It's really the gender, okay? And how our bodies show up, develop or undevelop is all a thing. And the way that our minds wrap around our culture and how we grew up to see and understand life, our lens, our narrative that we have in our mind first. The first thing you got to do is acknowledge our grief. in HIV. It's the first thing. If you want to take any step towards helping us or identifying ways that you can engage and enact with us, you have to acknowledge our grief first. And where is that rooted in? How it continues through our life, how it continues to show up because of HIV. And we have to, how we have to navigate, oh yeah, that's not HIV grief, that's actually slavery grief. Oh, that's actually having to take care of this person grief. It's actually that strong part grief. So when I had a massive heart attack, I immediately stigmatized myself and coupled it with HIV because I knew everybody was going to say, was it HIV? Was it a medicine? Was it HIV because your body has inflammation? And I'm like, nah, it ain't actually had nothing to do with HIV. I can't even tell you really why it happened besides a little bit of stress that most Black people have, you know? I don't know any single Black moms raising kids, especially boys or girls, that don't have this level of stress while trying to go to school. I can tell you that. But I did recognize that the grief that I experienced after the heart attack was the exact same feeling that I had when I got diagnosed with HIV. And so I had to go back to mental health therapy, and I had came in with a plan and said, listen, we're not going to focus on my HIV status. You'll learn that about me later. You can Google me if you want to, and that's fine. But I'm here to talk to you about the feelings that I'm having, you being my 12th therapist, and me having to jump back up from a massive heart attack. I want to understand, why am I having these feelings and no coping skills for it? So acknowledge my grief first. If you are of a privileged race, flex your privilege where you step down to allow us to step in and allow us to step up. If you are of a privileged gender in the HIV community, I ask that you also take a pause, step down or step aside, and allow us to fill in where we can step up and we can step in. If you're in a privileged space of leadership and have been for many of years, I'm asking you to take a pause, build our leadership capacity, and truly mentor us. Not just say, hey, there's an opportunity, but literally build up our skills and our understanding of the processes and the systems in which we are blindly going into with passion so that we don't get tokenized, misused, and abused in the process. And then if you do have the funds, when you have the funds, because you do, when you have the funds, do not give me small amounts of money to be continuous in your process and this work. Lift me out of poverty because you see that I have the ability to help others. I may not have the language, I may not have all of the education, but I can learn and I can do some stuff. But you have to be the one to lift me out of the poverty that I so many times have pleaded and begged and asked. Show me how. Even if you don't know every way, you can mentor me, meaning just hold my hand a little bit and say, steer me this way, like a parent does. And it may make you really uncomfortable, but comfortability is not the center of this conversation, as one of my mentors would say. And when you do pay me, understand that as a community member, if I'm impoverished, the little bit of money to you, that $20, that $50, that $100, and sometimes that $1,500 is the most money I've ever received in one lump sum, and it's going to get me over a hump that you rarely have to think about, that I'm continuously having to navigate. So pay me and pay me on time. And if you can't pay me on time, teach me how to navigate, understanding, and be completely transparent that this money is not coming with an expectation that I can get this past due bill paid. I need to figure out another way and wait for this money coming as a deep blessing. And last but not least, not last but not least, I got two more, I'm sorry. If you're seated at the table and you have the power to make some decisions, and you have a time to have an influence as a Black gay man or a white gay man in HIV, if you can't get us at the table, you need to ensure that we are on the menu. You need to ensure that we're on the menu. That's how you help us. You make sure that we're on the menu regardless. No matter what it is, ensure that we, as your sisters, as your cousins, as your god sisters, as your mom, as your niece, however you want to deem us, ensure that we're on the menu when you're at the table. Even if it's just focused on you, ensure there's some kind of way you have figured out and demanded that we're on that menu. And so my last but not least is this, and this was something that each of you has said that I just want to give this point right here. Just because I endured doesn't mean it wasn't urgent. I'll repeat that. Just because I endured doesn't mean that it wasn't urgent. So just because I didn't nut up and act a fool, and I wasn't screaming and hollering, I shed one tear or two tears, and I was snot-nosed when I left, doesn't mean that what I came for was not urgent. When I had that heart attack, you would not have thought I was having one, because I didn't fall out and roll over on the ground, screaming and hollering. I was just trying to tell myself to stay calm and telling you I can't breathe and my arm hurts extremely bad. Just because I endured that pain doesn't mean it wasn't urgent. That heart attack lasted for 30-something minutes. And they still had to do surgery, and it was 100% blockage. And yet still I was not taken seriously. I was told that they think I'm having a panic attack, and I'm saying something ain't right. My arm hurts, it's on fire. And so when I come in for my HIV diagnosis, just because I've been enduring this diagnosis doesn't mean that that moment I'm coming in, I'm not at a breaking point because I'm calm. Just because as a Black cisgender woman that I've been enduring doesn't mean that it's not urgent. Because when I leave from you, you don't know that the state of my mind, even though I smiled, I may want to take my life when I leave. Because I still felt empty afterwards. So that's what I got from each of you and what y'all were saying. I had to take these notes down because I was like, I don't want to miss what y'all gave to me in this. So just because Black women are enduring doesn't mean that whatever state that we're showing in doesn't mean that it's not urgent. That's all I have.
See, I knew Pastor Trailer was gonna bring it on.
So do I just like slam my laptop shut at this point? Because
I don't even know what we do, because she put that thing in gracefully. She put it concise. I'm open, baby. I don't even know at this point. You just get up and walk out. You know how sometimes in church they just play the music and because the spirit is heavy and they lingering. Just gracefully and real quietly put your finger and just exit out. You know, the ushers will see you at the back. Drop your offering out at the table, because it's heavy in here right now. There's a mighty work going on. So that's what just happened. But I want to thank each and every one of you all for giving. This is what I wanted this to be, a robust conversation. I'm glad it was a robust conversation. I'm looking in the chat now, and the questions that were asked, baby, y'all have answered those so eloquently. Give us the money and then go back and replay what Masanya said. The only thing that I will add to it is just like, stop trying to, like you all said it, but saying it again, if these were 6 Black women who show up in this world as cisgender HIV positive, there are almost 6 organizations right now. 6 organizations are in this room. And if you're wondering what you can do, find out where these 6 women are doing. Find out how you can support. If you got their loan money, or you got their grant money for a program that you're trying to figure out how to write, it's 6 women on this call who probably already wrote it and wrote it good. All you have to do is just be like, what you need, right? So the answers, all the questions have already been answered. What is I'm gonna read to y'all the answers. Let's see. Can you please tell us what are some of the best ways we can work with our HIV positive cisgender Black women in a way that they feel empowered and uplifted? I'm gonna simply say, listen. Before you try to take action, listen. Find someone in your community that's already paying attention to Black women. 9 times out of 9, there is a sister circle that's taking place around somebody's living room table that meets every Thursday evening for wine, or every Wednesday for Wine Down Wednesdays. And it's grown for probably 2 people to probably 15, where they bring in, it may be Taco Tuesdays, Wine Down Wednesdays. It may be every first Friday or second Saturday. But there's a woman in your community who is doing the work. Find her, listen, pay her for her time, and pay her equitably for her time and for her input. That's how you support Black women who have shown up, who've been on the receiving end of a HIV diagnosis, to make them feel empowered and emboldened, is that you first listen before you try to act, because anything that is done without us ain't for us. And so many times we see that happening. It's a whole bunch of things that's happening without us, but y'all want us to take it because you say it's for us. It's not. And we have this innate ability to sniff it out. The second question was, please share the building blocks we can use so you don't have to. This whole last hour and 22 minutes was what you can do in the building blocks you can impact and use, so we don't have to do the work. Masanya so eloquently said, use your privilege and make room. It starts right there. Use your privilege, make room. And if you can't make room, make sure that we're in the room. Bring us in the room with you. Making sure that your programmatic initiatives include us, and making sure it's, again, equitable inclusion and not something that's there for lip service. The building blocks are there, because once you bring us in the room, we gonna tell each other. We gonna find, like, girl, did you hear? Yeah, they meet every Shadon. They got a grant. They in Dallas, but I know you in Houston, so maybe it's something. Jocelyn, I know I ain't back at home in Memphis no more, but I heard, Messiah, did you? Let me forward this email to you. Lynette, check your inbox on Instagram. I know you somewhere up in that area, but if you don't know somebody, you know somebody, and they might know somebody. But that's how those are the building blocks. It's simple, ain't easy, but it's simple. Because simple ain't easy, but it's simple. I mean, it's not gonna be easy. You're gonna have to become uncomfortable, but become comfortable with being uncomfortable if you want to address the invisibility and the vulnerability when it comes to Black women and HIV. And the last thing was, I appreciate your input. This was powerful and enlightening. Thank you all so much for sharing space with us. Are there any other questions that you may have for the panel?
Lydia, I want to mention something.
Go, hold on one second. We have you in the room. Hold on one second, Ms. Lane. I'm still reading. Let me see. We have you in the room and are a major part of what we do in the community. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Sonia.
One of the things that I think we didn't mention is that if you're not a Black woman and you want to create spaces for Black women, right? I know that we're asking twofold. We're asking, one, to not make us always be the person to facilitate and not get to enjoy and be a part of it, right? But if there's enough spaces where one area you can lead and the other area you can just show up and be, that helps. The other thing is, Black women are really private and HIV is their business. So you have to find a way to make sure that they feel safe in the spaces that they're coming to, so that they can still feel like it's still their business and it's private because it's still their business. And I think a lot of times that just because we're public, you don't get to see this side of it's still private and it's my business, although I'm choosing to be public to discuss it for the betterment of like others. However, you ain't deep diving into all my stuff, like my boo and how long we've been together and how's that working for me in regards to, let me discuss that once I come into the room with the girls and get a feel of them, but understand the culture of Black women and how we operate and navigate amongst each other, because it could go one or two different ways if you don't go about it the right way.
Yeah, I like to say it's transparency versus vulnerability. Transparency is what you're getting today from us. Vulnerability is reserved for those I'm in deep and intimate relationship with, and because navigate accordingly.
Exactly. And that's what we say as therapists. And I say this to everybody. People have to earn the right to hear our stories. Period. Point blank. And oftentimes, it's like Masanya just said, you haven't earned that right to, for me to be completely vulnerable with you. But definitely, if you're serious about it, you can get there, but it's going to take you some time. And don't expect that right when we walk in the spaces. Because today is a choice for us to show up and be in this space. And like you said, be transparent, but we don't have to be vulnerable, because you have to earn the right to hear that and to get that and to receive that.
Y'all have blessed me on today. Hopefully, I pray that those who have been in attendance have taken something away. I like to say this is a brave space and not a safe space, because a brave space is one we shared, and you be brave enough to take the knowledge and the jewels and the nuggets that you got from here and implement it in your everyday lives, however you show up, working with and around HIV positive cisgender Black women. Dr. Rita, I'm gonna hand it back to you, but thank you so much for you using your privilege to create space for a much needed conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, ladies. When I tell you I was behind the scenes, I went from yes, that part, to tears, because of the truth that you've shared about your experiences. I don't think people really understand, because they haven't really heard from us. And I took notes. I was writing down as you guys were sharing your experience. I thought, oh my gosh, I can relate to Shadon. Oh my gosh, I can relate to Mazania. I can relate to all of you in your stories that you shared about your experiences. And I think what stood out to me as a woman, been living with HIV for the past 12 years. And just like Shadon, before the HIV diagnosis, I also felt invisible. But specifically being a therapist, working in the field prior to my diagnosis, I would work with women who are positive. And what I've noticed, even now being living with HIV and a consumer, is that people who come into the offices don't look like us per se. Yes, we're Black, but then there are women who may have experienced some really hard life experiences, and almost feel sometimes as if we're treated the same. Oh, this is their life. This is what's happening. Almost like this feeling of desensitization amongst the workers. They don't really tap into what has happened to fully understand our needs. So they're treated the same. But then when I'm there, I'm like, there's no one that looks like us. And I asked myself, why is that? And then I thought about my experience of, at one point, I wanted to be invisible because I was so ashamed of my diagnosis. And especially when I would go into the doctor's office for my blood work, and I would see the big old sign, infectious disease. I'm like, why do I gotta have that big old sign that says the infectious disease department as I come off the elevator? Do you know I would hide? I would get off at the wrong floor, or I would turn the opposite way so no one would see me go into the infectious disease. And I thought, isn't it a breach of confidentiality for anyone who's going into that department? You kind of just telling the world they're dealing with something. And I think this is the shame of it all. But then when I got to a place where I felt I was confident within myself and who I was, and no longer defined myself behind my diagnosis, I became more open, because I felt like all these things that I'm experiencing that I feel is wrong, if I continue to hide, how can I be also the voice to help support that change or that narrative? And then being on the other side, working in organization, non-for-profits, over the years, you're right, guys, all of you are right. You know, they put together programs. I'm like, but we're not at the table. How are you creating programs for us to adhere to, but we're not sitting at the table? Or if we are, you're telling us what's going to work for us. I'm like, okay, we're at the table, but listen to what I'm telling you, or believe our bodies. Believe me what I'm telling you, right? I can relate to you, Mazania, especially with the HIV and having other health ailments where everything was HIV, everything was HIV. I'm like, everything is not HIV. But when you go and you share about your advocating for yourself for your health, like it took them 3 years to diagnose me with cancer. I complained for 3 years. I'm like, why am I not believed? Right? So you talk about the mental health aspect, how I fell into depression because of just feeling like I had to constantly be on to show up. Because I felt like I wasn't believed, or I was overlooked, or made to believe it was all psychosomatic. And so, yes, I think this conversation is very important to talk about just the whole invisibility piece and building community and health advocacy. So I'm really I am forever grateful to you all to sharing your truths, but also providing those viewers with some insight and some tools that they can take back to their organization, especially if you're in positions of power, that you can also be the voice of change for us by inviting us to those tables and to sharing that privilege that you have. And so again, I thank you all for being a part of this discussion. Those who you are viewing, if you don't have any questions in the chat box, we're going to end this webinar. It is actually 12:30, so I want to be respectful of your time. But I do thank you for hanging out with us as we engage in this important conversation, and take this back to your organization. Have some have a meeting about this. Have a discussion in your supervisions, or if you have your clinical meetings or whatever types of meetings you hold at your place of business, to have this conversation of how can you make change happen in your organization? What narratives are you perpetuating that works against the change that we're in need of, so that we can be seen? It all starts with the conversation, right? It all starts with inquiring. And one thing to add to, and I'm a big proponent of this, is training. Trauma-informed care training, I think, is necessary. Again, I feel like sometimes we're all treated the same because the workers are, I think, maybe disconnected a bit from the reality of what we're actually experiencing and going through. But I'm gonna step off my soapbox and and conclude this webinar. But again, I thank you all for being a part of this webinar. And so until next time, you guys be blessed. I love you all. Hugs, hugs, hugs. Enjoy your summer. But we'll talk shortly. And to your viewers, be sure to tune into our webinar at 2 o'clock today. Be sure to register. And I will see you again at 2 p.m. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, y'all. Be great. Did you want us to leave? Oh, you do want to leave? Okay, bye.